entire empire. By the time he served and the fourth and the fifth king, he was the second most important person in the entire Babylonian empire. He was not a priest like Jeremiah or Ezekiel. But there was a royal blood in his veins. He was a very good-looking person. He was a person who had tremendous discipline in his life. But he was carried away as a slave from Babylon to Jerusalem. There was big change in his life and the lives of his friends. What changes did he face? Number one, there was a location change. He was taken from Babylon to Jerusalem. Babylon was a huge city in those days. It was one of the wonders of the world. The walls of Babylon was 80 feet wide. The height of those walls were 300 feet. The highest temple that was known in the world at that time was at Babylon, that was 60 stories high, 600 feet high. Here is a person who comes from a small city, is transported to a big city. We have come from the land of Lungi to the land of Pans in America. There is a location change that has taken place. Number two, there was a change in the education of Daniel. Nebuchadnezzar had given specific instruction that they be trained in all the languages and the literature of Babylon. He had to learn at least 3 languages. It was an intensive training program. There was no summer vacation. 3 years of intensive training. Nebuchadnezzar wanted to reprogram their mind. Complete change that was brought about through the education process. The University of Babylon was well stocked with books, and God had to teach them to make sure that they resolved to stand for the faith in spite of all the reprogramming. The third thing that diet changed. He was no longer willing to take part in the king's table, but to eat the vegetarian meal. The fourth thing was there was the name change. Daniel's name was changed. His name means Yahweh is my judge. But now he was given a name by a heathen god and saying, may Baal protect me. How did Daniel and his friends live in the midst of all 25 years has passed. How are we going to teach our children and young people to live in this change and the sea of changes? There are three basic attitudes that we look into today. When you are in a new location, when you are facing and living in a new culture, the basic way that people adapt is to compromise. You become absorbed in the culture. You reflect what is happening in the culture. You are like a thermometer. You indicate the temperature of that culture. If you want to know what the culture is, just look at you and you reflect that culture. You become like a chameleon. You adapt to the circumstances. The second way you look at culture, you withdraw from culture. You isolate yourself. You want to live like a sadhu, like a hermit in some isolated places. We talk to ourselves. We become a little huddle. We become a Pentecostal huddle. We become a Carolite huddle. We talk to each other. We don't talk to outsiders. We don't know how to talk to them. We isolate ourselves. Daniel did not compromise. Daniel did not isolate himself. What did Daniel do? He influenced that culture. He influenced that culture. He learned the language of Babylon. But he was not influenced by Babylon. He exerted influence upon them. Who did he influence? The entire empire. He exerted influence over kings. Not just one king, not just one minister. He influenced 5 kings. Not just for 4 years, not just for 5 years, not just for one term. He influenced them for nearly 75 years. In 25 years is one generation. He influenced people for 3 generations. It didn't matter what his position was. He prayed 3 times a day. It didn't matter what the laws of the land was. He prayed 3 times a day. It didn't matter what was offered to him. He refused to eat what was forbidden in the Word of God. It didn't matter whether they put him in prison. the lion's den. Because God miraculously closed the mouths of the lion. How was he able to do it? Because he made a decision with his heart. He resolved to serve God. He resolved to have his heart right with God. He resolved to have his heart right with his brothers. Most importantly, he trusted God with every part of his life. What should our attitude be? Is it to compromise? Never. Is it to isolate ourselves? Never. Our duty is to influence and to exert the influence of Jesus Christ by penetrating but keeping the resolve that we have made with God. It is when we take this posture we will shine like the stars. It is then that we become bright as the firmament of the heavens. It is then we turn many to righteousness. An average person influences 7 people a day. For good or for bad. By the way you look, by the way you smile or frown, by the way you show your anger, in one way or the other, for good or bad, you influence 7 people a day. That is an average person. Everyone seated here is above average. An average person will influence 2,555 people a year. God has called you and me to influence others for Jesus Christ. How do we influence others? Not through compromise, not through isolation, but to exerting but keeping our standards, exerting the influence of Jesus Christ. That's when we will be bright as the firmament of the heavens. That's when we will shine like the stars forever. Would you close your eyes? Would you make a commitment, Lord? Lord, I want to take this decision. Lord, I have lived in this world isolating myself.